Hello and welcome to another session of Groundbreakers Live. I'm your host Javed Mohammed, and I'm very honored to have with us Pete Finnegan who is presenting at the UKOUG. Pete, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And Pete is an Oracle ace. He also has his own business, and he's an expert in security and databases. So it's a real pleasure to speak with you. So I understand your session is about Oracle. I guess you're moderating the Oracle Security Roundtable. Is that correct, Pete?
I am, yes. Yeah,
Right.
I've got 3 sessions over the next couple of days. So I've
Oh,
got
wow. Okay.
an Oracle Security Roundtable tomorrow,
Okay.
and I've also got a session on secure coding in PLSQL,
Okay.
and I've also got a session in the apps stream where I'm going to be talking about the importance of securing the data in the database and not just relying on the security of the ERP or whatever ERP that is.
Mhm.
I've not actually defined that specifically.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about that. So
Yeah,
why
yeah.
is it important to secure the data within the database?
Because in general, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, helping people secure data in databases. And when you deal with big ERPs or it doesn't have to be an ERP, it could be a banking system or something. You have these big applications that are supplied by either Oracle or a third party. The company generally tends to treat the database as a black box, and they
Hmm.
have security people who are at the GRC level, the compliance level, and they're dealing with business related things. So things like, limits on financial transactions, or they're dealing with separation of duties, or they're dealing with conflict of interest and these types of things. But they never drill down into the database. And when I look at these systems, my area of focus is database level, but obviously securing data.
Hmm.
And I often find the database has no semblance of security settings, whereas they've spent a lot of time and money and effort securing the data from the application level. But the problem is, in this day and age, anyone who can access the database directly can probably steal the data.
Hmm.
So it's about protecting the data from everybody, not just the business users of the ERP or the big banking system. It's making sure the data is secure at every level. So the
Hmm.
ERP, the database, and then down even at the operating system level as well. It's
Okay.
about belt and braces.
Okay. So without getting into, obviously you've got a lot of detail that you actually
Mm,
share, but just at a very kind of high level, what are some of the things? So when you do get into the database,
mm.
what kind of best practices can you share? Maybe a couple that would apply.
Yeah, I mean, it comes when you're securing a database. It comes down to a number of different sort of angles. You've got the traditional patching, which is what people do with operating systems such as Linux or Solaris or
Hmm.
Windows. Patching is important with a database, but it doesn't actually secure the data. Because if
Hmm.
you think about it, the database is a generic open framework where you can design your own tables and your own program code in PLSQL, for instance, and it's up to the developer of the application to actually implement the security. So patching is important, but patching doesn't secure the data itself. And similarly, hardening. Hardening is also important. We must do the hardening. We change the settings, the parameters of the core database.
Hmm.
But actually, it's data security that we're interested in.
Hmm.
And we must then think about where is the data. So if the data's in the database, we need to be looking at permissions of tables. We need to be looking at permissions of users. We need to be looking at context-based security, so things like database vault or virtual private database, or things like masking, redaction, and all of these types of technologies are very important because they help us then secure the data in the database so that
Hmm.
the data is only ever exposed to the end users who need to see it, not anybody else who accesses the database directly or the operating system directly. So
Okay.
it's a complex area, unfortunately. But I guide people and help people think about all of these levels and these issues to make sure their database is secure and their
Okay.
data is secure.
And with the Oracle Autonomous Database and
Mm,
the database moving to the cloud, uh,
mm.
does that change from a security standpoint?
Not
Or
not really. I mean, in one sense, moving to the cloud gives you a benefit in obviously people interested in going to the cloud for business reasons. But in security terms, also the actual infrastructure, because it's now standardized and it's in the cloud, it makes it it makes it more secure at the level of the cloud, but not at the level of the database itself. So if you take an ERP system or an application that's been developed in-house and it doesn't actually have data security built into the design of the users or the
Mhm.
program code or the tables, and then you put that in the cloud, it's no more secure than it was on premise because
Mhm.
it's exactly the same. So from my perspective, helping people secure data in a database is exactly the same if it's in the cloud or if it's on premise. Obviously, you've got to look at the cloud elements of that as well. So, how OCI has been set up and how you've implemented all of the components of OCI, for instance.
Mhm.
I don't want to go into too much detail, but,
No, no,
it's
absolutely. I think, but I think it just shows, certainly for the benefit of the users, with all the breaches and
mm,
losses and bad actors actually out there. It
yeah,
just
yeah.
shows how important the subject is.
Yeah,
And
it's the key thing really is to really say to yourself, I'm not securing Oracle, I'm securing my data, my finance records or my personal data or, health records or whatever. That's what your task is. And then you've got to understand what are the risks from every level: OS, cloud, database, ERP, or big application, or whatever it is. You've got to think about, who are all the actors, who are the bad actors, who could potentially steal it. So you get all your consultants to come and lock down e-business suite and do all the settings in e-business suite layer, and then you get somebody who's a rogue DBA who's able to go straight into the database and ignore all of that security in the ERP and just simply access the data directly. And that's what I'm trying to help people think about. It's not just about the ERP in this particular context. We've got to think
great.
about protecting the data.
Okay. Well, Pete, I think it's a
Mm.
very important subject, and we just encourage all the viewers out there to check out your sessions.
Yeah, yeah,
All the
great.
best.
Thank you.